In a time of never-ending layoffs in the video game industry, Sony has officially announced the closure of London studio on February 27, 2024. You may know them for titles such as SingStar, The Getaway, maybe EyePet and Wonderbook, most likely for the most recent title, Blood and Truth. In their 22 years of operation, London Studio wasn't your typical developer. This was a studio whose history lies deep within PlayStation. Before they were London Studio, it was two separate developers, Studio Camden and Team Soho. But in 2002, Sony merged them together to form London Studio. They were probably known for their more niche games, with a lot of these aimed at a more casual audience. Anytime Sony had a new device for PlayStation, most of the time, London Studio was a huge supporter of it, one of the biggest being EyeToy for PlayStation 2. EyeToy was the star of the various PlayStation cameras we would see in each generation. London Studio was one of the biggest developers for it, with 12 EyeToy games developed. They were releasing these games consistently from 2003 to 2008, and many of these were only available in Europe. EyeToy was popular in North America, but eventually dwindled, which could be why EyeToy had more in Europe. You may have played the mini EyeToy play games, EyeToy Groove, or SpyToy. Perhaps you tried exercising with EyeToy Kinetic. Majority of these games were typically a collection of minigames, though some did have some interesting ideas. The Getaway series is often labeled as a Grand Theft Auto clone, but like a lot of these clones, The Getaway tried something different. In a love letter to British gangster films, The Getaway was mostly known for its recreation of a large chunk of London, something that delayed the game for years. The game lacks any kind of HUD, relying on visual cues such as the character limping or bleeding out when injured and healing when taking cover. There's no map of London to follow. Instead, the vehicle driven will signal where to go with its hazard lights and turn signals. The Getaway was a cinematic experience, taking place entirely in one day from the perspective of its two main characters. The original game was developed by Team Soho, but when London Studio was formed, they continued with a sequel called The Getaway Black Monday. Black Monday features a new story, 3 new playable characters, each having their own special abilities. The game features around 140 playable licensed vehicles, something Grand Theft Auto doesn't have. One major difference compared to the original is how different choices in the story affect the outcome of the game's ending. We would see the world of The Getaway expanded onto the PlayStation Portable with Gangs of London. Players pick one of 5 gangs to join, and from there, they have a portable version of London to explore, objectives to complete, and minigames to play. And that would be the end of the series. A third game was planned, and footage of its recreation of London on PlayStation 3 was showcased, but the game was eventually cancelled. PlayStation Home was well ahead of its time. Online play was free on the PlayStation 3, and that made PlayStation Home all the better. Despite it being one giant advertisement for products, games, movies, and TV shows, it was incredibly popular. Make your character, explore all the various places, chat with other people, play exclusive games, and then purchase outfits for your character and furniture for your apartment. PlayStation Home was amazing, and it's always been a damn shame Sony never had a successor. PlayStation Home actually started out as an online lobby for The Getaway Black Monday, but because the online user base wasn't entirely there on the PlayStation 2, the project moved to the PlayStation 3 and grew bigger, eventually becoming the PlayStation Home we all know and love. No matter what London Studio made, nothing was as big as SingStar. Might not seem like much today, but back then, PlayStation covered a wide variety of gamers. From hardcore to casual, there was something for everyone. SingStar was one of the most well-designed karaoke games you could play. And it was super successful, spanning over 115 titles worldwide in over 15 different languages. That was the beauty of SingStar. Each release was tailored for specific regions. SingStar was almost everywhere. Italy had releases, Australia, Sweden. The track listing in North America was different than in Europe, where the series had way more games. From its launch on the PlayStation 2 to its final release on the PlayStation 4, SingStar changed quite a bit, Its presentation, the menus, the logo, the types of songs present, I've always been intrigued at how much this series evolved over the years. SingStar on the PlayStation 3 allowed for songs to be purchased. An online community was introduced where people could share videos and pictures of themselves singing. If you lived in Europe, you could upgrade to wireless microphones. The PlayStation 4 focused on a free-to-play model where you could pick and choose the songs you wanted to purchase. The biggest shift was the push for a downloadable app on your mobile device that acted as a microphone. By that point, the series wasn't as popular and the game was eventually shut down in 2020. Everybody Dance, known as Dance Star Party in Europe, is basically a spin-off of the SingStar series. This is Sony's version of Just Dance for the PlayStation 3, and in my opinion, I think it actually does it better. The biggest difference was how Everybody Dance featured each song's music video. It didn't need flashy dancers and backgrounds, it's like more of a mature take on Just Dance. And like SingStar, there were a ton of new songs to download. The PlayStation Move was an interesting time for London Studio. One of the oddest games they developed was called EyePet. This was all about taking care of a virtual pet who appears in our world thanks to the PlayStation Eye camera. The pet can be dressed up, you can play with it, and it'll react to your actions and sounds. You can feed it treats. One of the cooler features is being able to draw in items for the pet to interact with. The game found moderate success, having a version for the PSP, a sequel on the PS3, and another sequel on the PSP. I think many of us remember Wonderbook. It was this augmented reality series that used the PlayStation Eye to transform the book into whatever the game wanted. And then the PlayStation Move could be used for all of its fine-tuning. Interesting technology, just completely forgettable. Clearly Wonderbook was aimed at a younger audience. Its biggest selling point was the collaboration with J.K. Rowling. Book of Spells and Book of Potions were new original stories set within the history of the Harry Potter universe, and honestly were the highlight of Wonderbook's only 4 games. With the launch of PlayStation VR, London Studio developed PlayStation VR Worlds. This was the game Sony wanted those players to play first. It's like a taste of the many things possible in VR. One of its standouts was the London Heist, and it became so popular in the collection that London Studio went all in and expanded this into a full game called Blood and Truth. This would be the last game London Studio ever released. The game takes things back to the Getaway era, London, gangs, and plenty of shootouts. Blood and Truth was originally envisioned to be another Getaway game. This feels like an odd swan song, a callback to one of their earliest and biggest hits. What's worse is the game ends on a cliffhanger, and who knows if London Studio ever planned on making a sequel for Blood and Truth. But before London Studio was shut down, they were actively working on their newest game. This was at a time when Sony was hell-bent on releasing many live service titles. We don't know the game's name, there was never any footage revealed, just this single piece of artwork. It was their most ambitious project to date. Set in a modern fantasy London, this PlayStation 5 game was going to be an online co-op combat game. London Studio themselves have a rich history with London. The world of The Getaway and Blood and Truth were both set in the city, and this game would have brought the team back to basics. London Studio developed a ton of games over their lifetime. The games I talked about are more of their major releases and the games I remember fondly, but they had sequels of sequels and many soccer games in their early years. They assisted on projects from other first-party developers. They were a total powerhouse on the PlayStation 2 and 3. Multiple games released in a year, often in such a short time. London Studio was like Japan Studio, a big supporter for PlayStation. Their games signified a time of diversity PlayStation once had. Their games brought in a casual crowd. They broke down barriers in a time when gaming was primarily advertised at a male audience. SingStar was a big factor in that. EyeToy games, EyePet, and Wonderbook were family-friendly and possibly the perfect introduction into video games for children. Sure, most of London Studio's output was more niche, but that's what made them stand out. If anyone who worked at London Studio is somehow watching this, I hope you know that your contribution to the gaming industry did not go unnoticed. You create some incredible and fun games, one of my favorites being SingStar, and you will continue to create even more memorable games wherever you find yourself at. Let me know in the comments below, What were your favorite games from London Studio? Like, share, and subscribe for future content. Be sure to check out my video on the rise and fall of SingStar, as well as my video on remembering Japan Studio. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.